Welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. For those of you new to my channel, I'm a gardener in Zone 5B, Ontario, Canada. I grow tropical and subtropical plants. And for my regular viewers, this is the much anticipated video on winter protection methods. Over the past 30 years or so, these are some of the techniques that have worked for me. And let me share them with you. I did a video some time back, which was just a brief overview on winter protection. This is much more in depth. Now this is going to be quite a lengthy project. When I first started, I didn't realize how involved it was going to be. Winter protection methods will vary depending on what zone you're gardening in. And of course the number of plants that you're trying to protect. In Zone 5B, we have to take extreme measures with the large variety of plants that I do grow. But the more tender the plant, the more extreme the winter protection methods. You basically want to create a microclimate for the plant or plants you have chosen. And it can be something as simple as mulching, heavy mulch with dried leaves covered with a tarp is sufficient to overwinter them. The more tender the plant, the more extreme the measures. And this will vary region to region. Even in my zone, different soil types will affect the hardiness of a plant. For example, if your soil is not quick draining, you may have wet roots, and that's death for most plants that we're trying to grow. So you want to start an exotic garden, a tropicalesque Mediterranean type garden. Where do you start? If I had to do it all over again, I would take a slightly different approach. Consider your property being in a much warmer climate than in the Zone 5B garden that it is. Make a list of plants that you'd want to see in this future garden. Now go big, but again, consider your realistic expectations as far as budget and your climate. How much work do you want to put into it? If you are willing to put the work into it, it is definitely doable. Consider the mature size of your plants. Many palms and shrubs can get fairly tall. Will you be able to successfully enclose them? And are you willing long-term to put the effort in to protect them every winter? Long-term, consider the location. Does the property get enough sunlight? The trees, the shrubs, etc. you're planning to put in, will one shade the others out? Will the spacing be sufficient between them to allow for watering, pruning, putting up your cold frames in the winter to protect them? Will they be blocking your view from your windows? All these can be factors in the success of your plants long-term. Also consider the slope of your yard. Is there slope enough on your property to allow for proper drainage so melting snow will not go towards your plants? Every property has microclimates, and take long-term records. Record temperatures, again, in an ideal world, over a number of years. All these things have to be considered well in advance. Consider your desired list of plants. You want to have year-round interest perhaps. You may just want to specialize in flowering bulbs, palm trees, flowering trees, shrubs, etc. And then consider the zone you're living in and how much work is it going to be to protect these plants. Here's a brief plant list for plants that require no supplemental heat. Most bulbs, tubers, corms, rhizomes, small agaves, bougainvillea, bananas, dormant plants such as figs. Simply provide a heavy mulch and then cover with a tarp, and that's more than sufficient. And this has worked in my climate where we've had winter temperatures at -30. The basic cold frame with C9 light bulbs can include plants such as most palm trees. I grow Trachycarpus, Pindopalms, Butea capitata, Cordyline australis, sago palms, Cycas revoluta, and other plants such as rosemary, many types of citrus, Yucca gigantea, oleander, and the list goes on. The most extreme method is having continual heat 24/7. Now there are plants that require extra heat, and again you have to consider your location and your budget. And this includes plants such as the white bird of paradise, Strelitzia nicolai, the orange bird of paradise, Strelitzia reginae, bougainvillea. And if you want fruit, you can grow things such as loquats and citrus. They will perform much better and have better tasting fruit if they do have more substantial heat. I've also grown plants such as the shrimp plant, Monstera deliciosa, and the list goes on and on. Base preparation is very important. I build raised beds for all my plants and fill them with the proper soil mix for that chosen plant. In this case, garden wall blocks are used, but you can use concrete blocks, bricks, etc. I line the outside walls with styrofoam wrapped with black plastic, which adds even more protection. I then mound the soil up higher in the center, so the plant is higher than the rest of the bed. Then I place a row of bricks around the plant to act as a base for the future cold frame. Once you've chosen your plant, you prepare the hole for the plant well in advance, putting in the proper soil, the proper depth. You have to choose the best location on your property for that particular plant. Keep in mind things like overhead wires, fences, underground cables, gas lines, etc. Also consider your community. There are many bylaws, regulations, and neighborhood associations. They may not want you putting up structures in specific areas. When you're having large trees delivered, also consider accessibility. Make sure they have access to your backyard for equipment such as a bobcat or a backhoe, etc. Also, when starting this process, consider your weather. I've kept long-term records, and you keep records for microclimates around your yard. Lower areas may have seasonal flooding from snowmelt over frozen ground, snow accumulation from drifting or where you have to shovel your snow and it piles up. The seasonal hours of sunlight. Shade from your neighbor's trees will impact the future of your plant. Also consider the spacing between your plants. For example, you will have to allow for easy watering, installation of cold frames, access for pruning, soil amending, and will it block the view from your window of your house, for example. I put a layer of black plastic over the entire bed, and this does several things. It warms the soil up. It also doesn't allow excess moisture from the winter rains and snow to soak into the ground. Most of the plants we are growing hate cold, wet feet through the winter. And you want to make sure that the entire thing slopes outward away from the plant. So as the snow does melt, it doesn't melt towards the plant. Most plants that we are trying to grow resent having cold, wet feet through the winter. Also, consider your budget. Consider your age. Long term, this is a many-year investment. Consider the cost of energy, the scale of your project. In my case, I have 13 cold frames in my front garden. Be realistic with your expectations. Know your limits. Also consider things like unwanted attention. Tourists and traffic will be affected in some cases. Consider things like spacing, placement of your plants. Dog walkers, sometimes dogs are curious, they will come onto your property. People will brush up against your plants, so make sure you don't have agaves, spiky plants, cactus, etc. And consider where you're going to store your cold frames and winter protection materials. When ordering your plants, consider the source material. Is it from an ecotype which is closer to your climate? Many plants ordered from Florida, for example, will not be as cold hardy as plants from the Carolinas or Georgia. Many plants go by regional names, so you may be surprised when you get a plant that you didn't order. Always specify the scientific name to get exactly what you want. In the second part of winter protection, we will discuss cold frames and their construction. As always, thank you for watching. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. I'd love to hear from you. Happy gardening.